Are live on TikTok. I think we're live on LinkedIn as well. All right, Vaughn. So we were supposed to be talking about some other things, but I think I want to talk about this, my last post, right? And I was talking about liberal white women and how sometimes you can feel unsafe with them because a lot of what they do is the same of what we see happen sometimes to the conservative white people. Can you hear me, Vaughn? There's a lot of noise and feedback. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, I think you're frozen on the computer. I think you're frozen on TikTok. I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, now I can hear you. But there's a lot of... Okay. So what did you think of the post?
So it's 100% accurate. I mean, literally, you are 100% right because there is no difference in how they show up. There is no difference in their impact. There is no difference in the danger that they pose because of their actions. And in fact, I think that the liberal white woman is in fact more dangerous because she wields her power in such a way that she always believes that she's right. Because that's why she can proclaim to be this liberal white woman. That's why she can proclaim to know what's best, right? And be okay and comfortable in environments where she's taking a lead role, right? Such as in a DEI leadership role where she does not have any experience or empathy or skills or strategy or reason to be in those roles. So you are 100% right.
So I just had to block a woman on TikTok. And what was funny was her comment was, I never challenge a Black woman's point of view, but I think what you're saying is full of shh. And I was like, well, so much for you never challenge a Black woman's point of view. And she considers herself a liberal. If you go on her page, it's liberal everything. And what was fascinating about that is, and this is why I find liberal women the hardest to sometimes deal with, because I think they think their liberalism insulates them from criticism. Because what they will say sometimes is, well, at least we're trying. At least we're doing better than most. At least we're not like them. At least we're not doing this. And my point was, the behaviors of how you show up is the same. The reason why you show up that way may be different, but the behaviors is the same. So I said something you did not like. And what was the first thing you did was weaponize your whiteness against me. Now, you are the same liberal woman that will say, I am here for, I support Black women. I care about these issues, until that Black woman or Black person does something that white liberal woman does not like. Until that Black woman or that Black person challenges that liberal white woman in some way. And then you go from, I am your ally, I am your supporter, to, why should I help you guys? Why should I be involved with you guys? Why should I do anything for you guys? I mean, it goes that quickly.
And the reason is because of, number one, epigenetics. It is inherently part of, let's just call it the colonizer gene, right? To control every aspect of the Black body. And so when it comes to Black women, especially in professional settings, especially in authoritative settings, especially in settings such as this, right, where here you have an experienced, confident, educated, credible, right, Black woman speaking about something which she knows very well. But it's not even about what you're saying. It's how dare you say anything. How dare you come out of your place. Because your place is always subjected to what I say it is as the white person, as the person in that power dynamic. And so it goes back to one of the responses that I did on one of your posts earlier about how they're never ready to even do this work. And the liberal ones are, I would say, worse than the conservative ones, because I'd rather have a conservative person, because it's like the Midwest nice kind of thing, right? Is like that fake nice where you're not really sure where you stand. I'd rather have somebody call me an N-word to my face and I know where I stand with you. I'd rather somebody walk around with a Nazi tattoo on their body so I know where I stand, as opposed to somebody to do that fake, oh, I'm a white liberal, blah, 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 right? So when it comes to how that white liberal woman shows up, we have to like call it what it is and recognize that they still haven't done their homework, right? So on top of the epigenetics, they haven't done their homework. And I talk about how they need to do it privately, personally, and professionally, but they don't do it because they think they know everything. Because they might have voted for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, or maybe they pulled the Kamala Harris lever. They think that they're doing something. When the bottom line is they're not doing anything but perpetuating the same system of harm and terror and subjugation and exploitation that they keep on doing over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we think about like what happens on that post and what that video is doing, how do you think that translate for what's going to happen in the masterclass and what we will be covering in the masterclass?
So I think that there's a couple of things. Number one, I think that we're going to know who, hey, what's up, Brad? We're going to know what's what by Friday or by Saturday, Sunday at the latest. The masterclass starts on Tuesday. We're going to do a preview day on Monday. But we're going to know, because the bottom line is this. For $242, we are giving people a total of 4 hours, which is equivalent. What they're going to get is equivalent to 4 hours of a graduate school course in empathy, right? It is what they're going to get. And because of, the other components, right? Because of the journal, because of the other pieces where they're going to be able to take this learning further, it's going to tell, right, based on how many people really show up. Because it's December. Most people are not going to have too much more time, right, to get opportunities for additional learning, especially when it comes to, right, professional development, right, because we at the end of the year. But how many people we got coming in our DMs, coming in our emails, etc., saying, oh, they this and they voted, or they did this and they did that. They're full of shit. They really are, right? Unless they can demonstrate that they're actually doing something to move towards making a difference. And I have more respect for a conservative woman, because at least she out there doing something to fight for the thing that she says she believes in.
True.
What are the liberal ones doing? They just online liking posts and saying, oh yeah, I agree with you, behind some fake user ID with a blurry picture or a bot picture.
It's funny because I think you follow her too. Her name is Ellen. She did a video, and Ellen's video was, she basically said that conservative white women will at least fight for, or like they are committed to what they believe in. Whereas liberal white women, and she considers herself a liberal white woman, is always angry about the other side and fighting against the other side, but they don't know how to coalesce around Black women, indigenous people, to where they are not the ones always leading the cause. So while they say they're for inclusivity, they're only for that if they get to lead it. Like they don't understand that part of that is giving or coming into community with Black women, indigenous women, POC women, without having to always be the ones leading and driving these efforts. And The whistling note has to be her headphones. My boyfriend does the same thing. Yeah, I was telling Vonda we're probably gonna have to do this another time because she's in an area where she can't get really quiet is on LinkedIn. So it's really loud and it's a lot of feedback. So we hate that we're not gonna be able to stay on live as long as we want to. I hear the whistling too, Melissa. But I just wanted to say that one thing, like I said, that Aaron said, which was conservative women actually fight for what they believe in. Like they have, it's religion for them. Whereas sometimes liberal white women are fighting against conservative white women, and not because they are steadfast in what they believe in. The voting is always in reaction to conservative women and not from this deep place of these are our morals and our convictions. And what do you think about that, Vaughn?
You're exactly right. And that is why when it comes to elections, that is why when it comes to issues, that is why I have seen, and I'm 53, right? So I'm almost 10 years older than you, right? So I have seen time and time again, right, how the voting is changing because Democrats, liberals don't feel like they have anything to fight for because the people that they see doing the fighting aren't fighting for anything. They just see them fighting against something, right?
Yeah.
So if I think about, like, I did an interview and it was about the masterclass, right? And I was telling somebody, like, the way I kind of look at it as, you know, you and I, and a lot of the work we do, we are fighting for Black women in the workplace, right? Because we are advocating for pay equity. We are advocating for them to not, you know, succumb and remain subject to all this gaslighting and abusive treatment, right, that they've been receiving, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're fighting for something. That's something that people want to rally behind. But what I want to say, right, so I said Oprah is that too, right? What I want to say is that it is so key to have something to fight for. And that thing you fight for, it should be that thing that is so important to you that you're willing to do it. So when you think about, even as a whack example, as I'm getting ready to get it, but if you think about the January 6th people, okay, them people was committed.
Yeah.
They was committed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Albeit
for the wrong reason. Yeah, albeit for the wrong reason, but they were committed.
But they did everything that a committed person does. They show up. They communicate. They rally other people. They come prepared. They make
they spent a lot of money. They spend a lot of money. Those people
and practice and prepare.
I know those people had to get on planes, trains, buses, and I don't even know what they spent in actual resources to go. You know, some of them, you know, spending more money on lawyers and the rest of it. But the level of commitment that they had to what it is they do is very different than what it is. And you know, this one white woman commented on that video and she said, what you're saying is true, but I feel like white women have to understand this and listen to this with a level of consciousness that a lot of us aren't there for. Because she got what I was saying. And my point was, it's not me saying to white liberal women not to have boundaries with family members who are racist or homophobic or anything else. The video had nothing to do with your boundaries. I was speaking to the behavior. The same behavior you loathe in conservative women is the same behavior you exhibit. And the same behavior you exhibit, you believe that you have more empathy than conservative women, but you really don't, because you will throw away your family members, you will throw away your friends and walk away from people and feel nothing, have no real emotion behind walking away from people. And I'm like, that is such a function of white supremacy, because when you don't comply, you get cast out. And so the behavior of casting people out is no different than what they judge conservative women for. This was not about what your boundaries are and setting boundaries for yourself. That's a different conversation. And, you know, that's what people pay for me to do with them in the mentorship. It's a different conversation. but recognizing that your behavior isn't that much different than the people you say that you are upset with, or the people you say you don't like. The behavior is pretty much the same.
There is no different. What is different is how you are speaking about what you believe in, right? But it's just so disingenuous, right? Even earlier, like, or maybe it was yesterday, we were talking about the disingenuity of people when it comes to arguing, right, certain components of equity, or arguing certain components of what is seen as anti-Black or what is not, right? Mm-hmm. If people are literally, like, I was on a live earlier today, and there was some people having a conversation about Christianity, right? And of course, there were some Black folks trying to defend Christianity and saying it's not all bad. Right. So some of the people on the live were like, well, what's good about it, right? And so it kept bringing up the thought for me around how, and you and I have talked about how Christianity has people in a chokehold, right? Well, anti-Blackness, right, has white liberals in a chokehold, because what they don't understand and what they don't seem to get, right, is that the entire systemic way that even how they've come to do any equity type of work in and of itself is anti-Black. Because if not, why would they be leading it? If not, why would it even be a topic? Why would anti-Blackness even be something that we would need to focus on if it were not this deeply undergirded systemic anti-Blackness at the very, very core of all of everything,
right?
Every single structure and system that we have.
And you know, the funny thing is, a lot of times what I hear liberals fighting for or talking about is inclusivity, but they never talk about rooting out anti-Blackness at its core. Like, they never talk about how anti-Blackness is driving how people show up in spaces, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's in social settings, whether that's in universities, in hospitals, in schools. They never talk about the deep-rooted anti-Blackness that exists, because while the Democratic Party or liberals particularly tend to be more diverse in terms of ethnic and racial background, even within that diversity, even within that branch of POC, still lies a lot of anti-Blackness with people of color. There's lots of anti-Blackness in the Asian community. There's a lot of anti-Blackness within the Latin community. There's a lot of anti-Blackness in the Black community, right? You know, we are still dealing with colorism and the paper bag test, depending on where you come from in the country and where you go. And liberals don't really talk about that. And I think because if they had to talk about that, they would have to confront their own anti-Blackness, right? And I think this is why when we do the mentorships around anti-Blackness, and when we do these masterclasses, beyond just getting to the point of empathy and understanding of putting yourself in somebody else's shoe. And I gave an example with my mentee yesterday, and I said, you know, I have a family member that is enthralled, I mean, like in the throes of alcoholism, and we have done as much as we could, right? We have clear boundaries in that relationship, but what we did not do was throw him away. There's always room for him to come back in if he wants help, if he wants to change. But if you throw your family members away in the name of boundaries, how do you ever reach them? How do they know to come back to you and say, hey, I've been really thinking, or somebody else got to me, I want to talk to you about that, because you've created this wall that says you can never come back in space or community with me. And so this is the point I was trying to make, is that you have to have empathy is not without boundaries. And I think when people hear empathy, they think empathy is, I would just let you come and I would just let you do whatever you want. I have great empathy, but my empathy does have boundaries. And with this family member, I allow them to come back and I get to assess where they are. Oh, you're not ready to do the work? Okay, boundaries, go back up. But what they understand is that they can always come. I haven't cut them off. I haven't shut them off. I haven't thrown them away because they are living or doing something that is abhorrent to me. You know what I mean? To waste your life away in addiction, it's such a sad state of affair for me. But my empathy for them and what's happening to them and where they are mentally sits still is there. Like I said, you always have access to come back, and I get to assess, are you ready to make that change? Are you really ready to get help? You're not. Okay, boundaries go up again. But the empathy I have always leaves room for those people to come back. Somebody said anti-blackness is rampant in the Indian community. Yep, we know that.
Yeah, that's for just. So one of the things, right, that is coming up as you were talking is really to me around how in the Black community, right, we look at boundaries and we look at calling people in a healthy way, right?
Yeah.
We look at accountability in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Whiteness doesn't allow for that because whiteness doesn't allow for accountability for wrongdoing, right? If that was the case, why would we need laws? Why would we need to, if we have a murder on a videotape, have 2 and 3 years long trial to get justice, right? So it boils down to a couple of things. Number one, that there's different levels of rules and standards and responsibilities, right, that white citizens have versus non-white citizens. And there is such rampant anti-blackness that because Black people are at the bottom of the socio hierarchy in the Western Hemisphere, is that we are always going to be judged the most harshly and have the most harsh judgments also put on us. So whenever we, right, try to maintain a boundary or a standard in the space of whiteness, it looks so antagonistic. It looks so oppositional. It looks so like, oh my God, when it's literally us just basically standing up for ourselves, right? Or just speaking up. And so there is such this sense of like, well, how dare you call out my behavior if I am a white person? You cannot call me out for doing something wrong because you in of it yourself as being a Black person are the definition of wrong. You are the essence of wrong, right? Because Black is wrong, white is right, Black is bad, white is good. So it takes away, right, the opportunity to even have that credibility, right, in the face of how do you handle somebody that has some egregious and abhorrent behavior. I know I have told the story to you and other people about how I saw, right, a 10-year-old boy beat up his 6-year-old little sister unprovoked for no reason, and nobody did anything. Well, how did he get to be 10 years old and engage in that kind of behavior? Obviously, he's been doing it, right, and never gotten chastised for it, right? So in 10 or 15 years, if that same 10-year-old at 11, 12, 15, 19, 25 never gets chastised for any of his poor behavior, right, when it comes to how he treats women or girls, then what's going to happen? It's just the behavior is just going to keep on getting worse as it remains unchecked, right? And so when we're talking about any type of, I think, human development, especially in these spaces where we're talking about, you know, deeply personal things and deeply emotional things, it's super important to think about those differences in Black and non-Black and white and non-white and Black and white, right, households, and how we look at accountability and boundaries in conjunction with each other.
Yeah. Like I said, I think,
what you think?
I think people confuse boundaries, empathy and boundaries, and you can have both. You can have great empathy and real boundaries for what people can and cannot do with you, how people can and can behave with you. But it doesn't mean you don't leave space for people to come in community with you, right? And empathy, we talk about this, and we'll talk about this in the masterclass about different ways of the different ways that you model empathy and how empathy has to be modeled. And empathy wasn't modeled for a lot of folks. And so When Black people are demonstrating empathy, it feels like we're asking them to erase boundaries. And all we're saying, this is what empathy looks like. But if you don't know empathy, if you don't have empathy, it looks like I'm telling you to remove boundaries from yourself. And that's not what I'm telling you. That's not what I'm telling you. But if you don't know how to be empathetic, if you don't have empathy, if you've never had empathy modeled for you, it's going to look so weird. It's going to feel like I am telling you to allow your racist grandpa back in, to allow your racist grandma back in, like to let your children be around racist people. That's what it's going to sound like to you. That's what it's going to feel like to you, because you don't know what empathy looks like. You've never had it modeled for you. You don't know how to model it yourself. And so you think your only recourse for racist family members, racist parents, homophobic parents, is to completely cut them off. And my point was that inside of whiteness, you have to always be obeying. You have to play by the rules. And if you don't play by the rules, you will get escorted out. Whatever that white game is, you will get kicked out of it. And if you continue to live your life and build your relationships that way, how do you reach these parents? How do you reach these grandparents? I can't reach them. If they don't like Black people, how am I going to reach them? Who's going to reach them? The family member who is enthralled in addiction? We're going to have to be the people to be reaching, to try to reach him. And we continue to try to reach him. And again, when he starts crossing boundaries, we put boundaries back in place and say, listen, you will always have a place to stay. We will always take care of you, but you can't live here and do this. You can't come into my space and behave this way, right? So there's boundaries in place, but there's the empathy that says, if you need from us help, if you finally decide that you want to go to rehab, if you finally decide you want to go to treatment, we are still here to be able to give that to you. But again, because inside of whiteness, if you don't do what you were told, you will get kicked out. And so whether you get kicked out from a conservative perspective or you get kicked out from a liberal perspective, it forces you out. And it's helping white people learn a different way of being in relationship with one another and what empathy looks like when you are in relationship with one another. And so that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in the masterclass. For those of you who have signed up, is unleashing empathy and showing people how to do that in a way that still honors your boundaries, but teaches you how to care about people outside of yourself.
Yeah, I think I want you to talk a little bit about, one of the things that you do, like, I don't know, at least 3 times a week, right? Is in your trainings that you do, the team trainings that you do, right? Mm-hmm. You do a lot of work talking to managers who lead teams, like all the time. Yeah. So in a lot of the groups, most of the teams of the managers that you coach all the time, they have mixed teams, men and women of different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things that you talk about from an empathy perspective with leaders of teams, right, in terms of how they first need to understand and have empathy for themselves.
Well, one of the things that I talk to managers with, and this is one of the things that one of the trainings that I offer is called currency and competency, understanding your team's, each of your employees' currency and understanding their competency. And part of understanding their competency, I see this a lot in managers and I see this a lot in corporate, where managers don't really know their employees' competency to do their work. And so because they don't understand their employees' competency to do their work. And I always say, one of my girlfriends said to me, she started a job. She's been on this job for, I want to say 3 months. And they hired her in as a contractor to do a management role. And she said she had an employee say to her, I am so glad you're here because I finally have somebody that I can say, I don't quite really know what I'm doing on my job. Now, this is somebody who's been working at this place for 4 years. 4 years. And she says to this contract manager, I'm glad you're here. You're the first manager that I can talk to and say, I don't quite really know what my job is. And I said to her, I said, now, can I tell you why this person waited 4 years to say anything to anybody? Because when you don't know what your job is, And the longer you wait to tell somebody, I don't really know what my job is, the harder it is for you to tell that truth. So everybody is just doing enough to get by. But I said, what it also tells me is that that manager don't know what their employees do, because there's no way you can know what your employees do. That employee could be working for you for 4 years and that employee doesn't know their job, and you haven't noticed that they don't really know their job, right? And so part of what I was saying to this the girlfriend who actually got contracted, because she does some coaching with me, is she's like, immediately, for the first time, she's a white woman, she said, I felt empathy for this person. For the first time, I could put myself there, because I have been there where I have been on jobs and I didn't really know what my job is, and I didn't feel safe to tell anybody else. So when this employee said to me, I feel safe to tell you, she goes, Tammy, I'm telling you, immediately I felt empathetic towards this person, because I went, I get this. I understand this. I have been there. And part of, for managers, is when your employees are talking to you about whatever their issues are, is to put yourself there, because we've all been there. Everybody didn't start off as managers. Most of us started off as regular employees, managers. And so we've had some experiences that, we can recognize in some of our employees. And if you can recognize those experiences in your employees, that's how you develop empathy for them when they do come and share with you that they're struggling, that they don't really know what they're doing at work. And then once you can figure out what your employees' competencies are, and I think managers need to be assessing this every quarter, just every quarter checking in to make sure that their employees truly know their work. They truly know their job role. They truly know their function. And once you've checked in with their competency, then you have to figure out what their currency is. And then you have to pay them in that. You have to pay them that in their currency. Every employee's currency is not money. Every employee's currency is not time. Every employee's currency is not validation. What is your employee's currency? What matters to them? For some employees, they need more time. Maybe they have a sick parent. Maybe they have a small child. For some employees, they need recognition. They need to know that their managers appreciate they're coming in early and leaving late. So they need that from their managers. And for some employees, it's like, I don't need any of that. Give it to me in my paycheck. For some employees, they need more money. And so these are the things that we talk about in leadership and management training, is helping managers identify what their employees' currencies are, and then paying their employees in that.
So, speaking of currency, I want to take a few minutes and talk about how, when a person invests in their own development, how that investment in their own development helps to solidify, right, that learning. Because one thing, and I've been on TikTok only about a year, I guess now, really. But one of the things that I've seen, not only on TikTok but on other apps as well, is the tons and tons of amazing, right, content creators who do education content, right? You do education content specifically for managers. I do education content, as a mentor for leaders, right? But when you have all of this content out there that people are consuming for free, how do you help people understand the value, right, of investing in their own learning, the value in investing in their own development, so that they can understand that, yeah, maybe you might be used to getting things for free, but that's not really how it goes. And then there's another piece that I think we should talk about around people not finding it common to pay for things when it comes to Black women, right? And not paying Black women for our services. So give me some thoughts there, Tammy, like off the top.
Well, I did a one of the things that says give a hot take, and I said the hot take is,
give me some thoughts.
A lot of white folks are only interested in doing their work if it is free, if it doesn't cost them any real investment in time, or if it only costs them no more than 3 minutes of a TikTok video. And that's evident. And it's evident when some of the content creators are offering classes or mentorship or whatever else, and they can't convert these same white folks who are always in their comment section, and some Black folks too, all folks, right? If you can't convert them, that just tells you people aren't really ready to do the work. And the truth is, you know the way I roll, Vonda. I don't want people who aren't ready to do the work, because to me, that's more work for me. I want people to come into mentorship with me. I want people to come into the master classes with us who are ready to do the work. And whether that's one person, two person, three people, four people, I just believe people will get to do the work in earnest. And and I know, what we do requires people coming in because it's a revenue source for us. But my work is far more important to me, and I know it's more important to you, that I'm doing the work with people who absolutely want to be doing the work. I want to be doing the work with people who are going to be uncomfortable in the work, who are going to be challenged in the work, because I want the work to work. Now, some people want just the numbers and the monetary value of people coming in and saying, "Oh, I made $1 million on the course." And they don't care that somebody didn't learn anything. They don't care that somebody didn't get something from that training to take into their everyday life and be better in it. That's not me. And I know that's not you. So while we want people to be a part of the mentorship, we want people to take the masterclass, we want people who want to invest in their personal development. We want people who actually want to do this work. And, my motto is one person, two person, three person at a time. One thing that's been really helpful for me in my business is most of my work has come from referral. It's people who've been in the mentorship with me that said you need to sign up with Tammy's one-on-one mentorship. It's companies who've worked with me for bias training, culture development, that told other like this past year, all of my work has been on referral. I haven't ran one paid ad. It's been on referral. It's one client telling another client to hire. It's another client saying, you got to hire, you got to hire. And to me, that's the work I want to do with people. So whether it's 5 people that show up to that masterclass, or 10 people that show up to that masterclass, or 50 people show up to the masterclass, I want the 50, the 5, the 10 people that really, really want to do this work. Whether they and we built this around making sure that Black women who work in DEI come to this masterclass so that they don't feel alone in these roles, because we know that Black women get the brunt of being gaslight in their role. They go from pet to threat pretty quickly. And we want white women and white men who are already in this DEI role that really want to use their privilege as leverage for equity for people who look like you and I.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just so it's such I for one, I'm super excited about everything because it's super refreshing to have a conversation that's not happening anywhere on the internet. Where do you hear anybody talking about the lack of empathy in terms of why DEI initiatives haven't progressed? Where do you hear anybody talking about the need to, really unleash empathy, or the need to unpack anti-Blackness, or the need to dump diversity, equity, and inclusion in lieu of strategies that are going to really work? Like, you don't hear anybody talking about it. And so, like, I'm excited to be, to be doing it, right? I love what Mimi has in here, around people not letting their default right of defensiveness take over, because in a learning environment, you have to be open. One of the things that was interesting about the live I was listening to earlier is because it was a conversation around religion and Christianity and formalized religions, and how they are oppressive in nature, and they're made to uphold anti-Blackness. The people that were arguing in favor of Christianity as Black people was super interesting, right? But they default defensiveness was the reason they couldn't hear, right, the conversations. And it made me, Tammy, think about one time you were talking about logic and reasoning. You were telling me you were having a conversation with your sister one time. Do you remember that story? You were telling me you were having a conversation with your sister about religion, And it took maybe like a couple of times y'all were having a certain part of the conversation to where she had softened up just enough, right?
Yeah.
And her defensiveness was down just enough that you could ask her a question. Say a little bit about reason and logic when it comes to like some of this defensiveness, right, that folks have in these situations.
Well, the thing is, people logic goes out of the window because you have to think about, particularly for people around religion, and I would say um, race is almost a religion in itself, in that people believe in it so strongly, right? So if you have somebody who is white who believes inherently that black people are inherently more violent than white people, that belief becomes like a religion to them. If you have white people who believe that black people just aren't as smart as white people, that black people's station in life has nothing to do with systems but their own unwillingness to work hard, their own unwillingness to learn, their own unwillingness. And for a lot of white folks, that belief is like a religion for them. So when they come into community with black folks who saying, no, 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 there's a system in place that's made this. This is why this is. There's systemic racism. There's problem within the system. The laws are inherently racist because during the time, black people weren't even considered people. So to pretend that these laws were made with us in mind is insane. But if their belief in racial hierarchy and purity is like a religion for them, logic goes out the window. But this is why I say empathy is so important, because my sister is incredibly religious, like, I mean, super Christian. And I am not. I'm not incredibly religious. I'm not a super Christian. And we were both raised in the same home, same upbringing around faith and religion. And so with my deconstructing, I've been trying to have conversations with her about faith, about religion, and about, okay, let's look at this logically. Like, this logically didn't make any sense. But because that belief is so deeply entrenched into her, the first 4 or 5 years, I couldn't have the conversation. I just could not have the conversation. It wouldn't get through. Logic did not prevail. Reason did not prevail because her belief in her religion was so strong, logic was not getting in. Now, what if I said, I'm not going to talk to my sister anymore because she's super Christian and super homophobic? I wouldn't be where I am right now with my sister, right? Where, like, I'm not going to tell anybody her belief system around homosexuality has changed, but her feelings about people who are homosexuals have changed. Language she uses when talking about them has changed. Conversations she would have had before, she no longer has. And that's because I didn't cut her off and say, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because you don't believe this way. I just kept talking. I kept bringing up the discussions, and I found creative ways to have those discussions. And now we were having a conversation about it, and I could see the moment when logic was just like, oh, we were having a conversation about religion. And I said something that 2 years ago would not have gotten through. It would have not gone through to my sister. Like, it wouldn't have made it through the front door, let alone I would have been out there peeking through the window trying to get this thing to go through. And I was in the front door with what I was talking about regarding Christianity and faith. And for the first time, and I would say 4 years, my sister sat in my living room and she was like, I see what you're saying. I could believe that. And that was stunning. That was stunning. So when I made that video saying you do the same thing as liberal people that conservative people do in terms of cutting people off, if you keep cutting if everybody just gets cut out of your life without any feeling, without any emotion, without any thought about what that means for you, I I need you to sit with what was that relationship? Is there no pain for that loss? Is there no sadness for that loss? And to have empathy, to understand, especially for white folks who grew up together with siblings, to have empathy that you probably was where your brother and your sister still are. And that through your own education, through your own self-development, you are on the other side of that thinking, that belief system, and to decide that now that you're out, screw them. who goes back and gets those people? So this masterclass is really going to be focused on empathy for all people, but empathy inside of the DEI space, and why we need more empathy in the workplace, why we need more empathy in DEI, because empathy leads you to action. It is the empathy I had for my sister that led me to continue having conversations with her. It is the empathy I have with my brother to still be in communication with him even though he is struggling, and to let him know that, when you're ready to do this work, your family's waiting for you to do this work. And that's what we want people to do, is to walk out of that masterclass and think about their familial relationships different, to think about their friendships differently, and to lead with empathy with the people that they have in their lives. And again, empathy is not about erasing your boundaries. It's about creating space for people to come to you and learn from you, and for you to have an opportunity to share your own personal growth and development. So I know we've been on here for about an hour. We didn't want to keep you guys long, but we want to just jump on and kind of do some lives just to tell people what the masterclass is going to be about, to encourage you to join us in the masterclass for your own personal development. I'm going to let Vonda have the last word, and then we're going to get out of here.
Hey, so no, that was just like a great conversation. Only thing is to tell people to go to leader2legend.exclusive.com, right, and go to the red button and hit register, and then just, follow, share, and like. But really to just kind of think about the fact that unless you are putting your actions behind this, then don't even bother, right? And this is a simple way. This is a cost efficient way. This is a smart way. This is a savvy way, right, to get the skills you need. And one of the key skills you need if you want to help drive equity, if you want to help drive inclusion, if you want to help drive any advocacy that's going to support Black women in the workplace, then you need to have empathy, and empathy has to be unleashed. So go to leader2legend.com and sign up for the masterclass. That's all I got.
That's all we got, y'all. Thank you for those of you who sat on the live with us. LinkedIn, I think Mikkel and Katie and Lisa, thank you for hanging in. We will be back sometime this week. We're just gonna pop on. Vonda is in a place where we have to figure out what her situation is gonna be. But thank you guys for joining us on this live. We will see you guys later this week. Bye, everybody.